We are back, Jim. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics, and without further ado, let's go right to it. In studio guest, Michael Davidson, candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 30, who, let me add, is endorsed by the Veterans in Politics, and we encourage everybody to go vote for Michael Davidson. But as you know, we're biased now, so let's just go with Michael. Mike, go ahead.
How you guys doing today?
We're doing good, Mike.
Give us a bio, Mike.
Been here 32 years. Practiced law for that whole period of time. Married to my best buddy, Patty, who is listening. I told her she could listen to the
You gave her
show.
permission?
Well, it was more than just giving her permission. She does what she wants to do. But I wanted to make sure that if I step on my toes at all here, that she can smack me upside the head when I get home.
Mike, let's ask this favorite question that I hear all the time, and a lot of people are on both sides of the aisles. People think that judges should be elected by the people because they feel that it's fair that the people should elect their judicial candidates. But there's also some folks that feel that judges should be appointed by the governor or some elected board because they feel that it might be unbiased of people giving campaign contributions, and you might vote for one over another, and lawyers put money into campaign, and you might favor one lawyer over another lawyer. How do you feel about the whole process?
It really is a tough issue for me, Steve. I see it from both sides kind of uniquely. Because I've been in both positions. I think I come out the way most Nevadans do. I don't really want to give up the opportunity to vote for judges or any other elected officials. But I think there's a problem in that the judge races are not too different than most of the down ticket races, and people just don't know enough about us to make educated choices. Now, it's up to us to try to get out there and provide the information that they need, and shows like this help us do that. People can go to websites and read about us, or they can go to the newspaper websites and see what we've had to say. And I think that a system that provides for some kind of vetting of candidates is a good thing. But I went through that process. When Judge Mike Douglas went up to the Supreme Court, I was one of the folks who applied for the vacant seat, and I was lucky enough to come through judicial selection. It was one of the names that was recommended to the governor. A very competent judge, Judge Gonzalez, got the nod that time. And so, I've seen how the process works on both sides. I think that there's a little bit of a lack of understanding about SJR2, the proposal that you're talking about. I don't think it's going to take all the money out of the judicial races, and here's why. The proposal that the people are going to vote on this time would provide for a screening process for judicial candidates, similar to the one we have now when we have vacancies on the district court bench. And names will be sent up to the governor, and the governor will make the appointment. And then when your term is expired, you run for retention, and you have to receive 55% of the vote to be retained. But anybody who thinks that a district court judge who is fighting for retention is not going to go out and try to raise money, or anybody who thinks that the lawyers are not going to feel that it might be appropriate for them to support a judge for retention who is coming up for a retention election, I think is just being naive about it. And so it may take the money out of the front end of the equation, but I don't think it's going to take the money out of the back end.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you very much for a very honest answer. We don't see that much here with politicians in general. So why exactly are you running for judge? I mean, why do you want to be a judge?
Because it's important, and in a very real sense, I've been training for this job for 3 decades now. As I said, I've practiced law here for a long time. I've seen the practice of law from all sides. I was in private practice for 20 years, practiced all kinds of civil litigation, every kind of civil litigation you can practice. I was a criminal defense attorney. I spent the last 10 years protecting this community as the assistant district attorney running the civil division of the DA's office. We represented all of the elected officials, all the appointed officials. I, along with my partner, Stu Bell, who was the district attorney, and Judge Thompson, who was the other assistant, were responsible for making the death penalty decisions for the office. I did all the coroners' inquests.
Let me stop you right there, Mike. Speaking of the coroner's inquest, do you think that's a fair process? Because I haven't heard of any police officer at all has been found guilty of doing anything wrong at a coroner's inquest ever since I've been in town. And I can remember clearly about this one particular individual. He was 19 years old. He was handcuffed from behind. He flee from the police car. He was running with his hands behind his back, cuffed, and he was shot in the back by a police officer, and that police officer was found innocent of any wrongdoing. Now, I know if somebody was fleeing my house after trying to rob me and I shot them in the back, I'll be found guilty of either murder too or manslaughter or something. So do you think this coroner's inquest is fair for all the people, or is it just fair for police officers?
Good question. And here's the deal on coroner's inquests. And I get asked this a lot because, as I said, I did them for 5 years. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about what the coroner's inquest is intended to do. It's not intended to determine whether a police officer is guilty or not guilty of a crime. It is a process for the coroner to make a determination whether or not a shooting was justified, excusable, or by criminal means. And then if it were to be found that it was by criminal means, the district attorney would have to make the decision whether to prosecute. The problem with the coroner's inquest is the perception, as you have said, that it is slanted in favor of the police officers. And I can understand why that happens. We meet with the police officers as the district attorneys before the inquest takes place. They're the ones who do the investigation. They do the workup. When we get to the coroner's inquest, there are some unique things that happen. It's really the only proceeding where the jury, and there is a jury in a coroner's inquest, gets to ask questions of the witnesses. People in the audience get to ask questions of the witnesses. So the family, the legal representative of the individual who was shot gets to submit questions, and they get to be asked. Here's the problem with the coroner's inquest. If you change it to a more adversarial process, though, police officers won't cooperate. If they know that they are likely to be charged with a crime based on the testimony they give at a coroner's inquest, they're going to be advised by their attorneys to dummy up, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So if you think of the coroner's inquest as a process for determining whether or not the police officer is guilty of a crime, you're going to be disappointed. If you recognize it as what it is, a tool for the coroner to make the decision that he or she has to make, it's a different ballgame. So there have been some changes made. Used to be that the presiding officer of the coroner's inquest was an attorney. Now it's a justice of the peace. Are there other changes that could be made? Could be. But anybody who thinks that changing it to a process that's going to be more adversarial and one in which police officers will be held accountable, that's not what the coroner's inquest is designed to do. And changing it to that kind of a process is just going to result in there being no inquests at all.
So, Mike, is there any way? How would you try to fix that? Because I'm with Steve on this one. My perception is of Metro in general is they shoot first and ask questions later. And as a conservative Republican, if I have that feeling myself, you can only about imagine what a liberal Democrat would think.
Would that be Steve sitting next to you talking about?
Yeah, he's not exactly a liberal Democrat.
No, I know.
That's why we sit next to each other.
And Metro honestly has had a bad couple of months lately.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of shootings. I will tell you this. There have been some inquests that I have done that I wasn't sure how they were going to come out because there were some judgments that were made by police officers that I thought were questionable. But when people get into that jury box and they're asked to make these decisions, and after they hear all the evidence, they tend to be very careful about the judgments that they make. And I think most people, when they are asked to sit in judgment of a police officer who's in that situation, take it very seriously. And I thought a couple of them could have gone the other way. And I'll also tell you that until you have listened to all of the evidence in every one of these cases, it's hard to make judgments. If you make your judgments just based on what you hear on the TV or what you read in the paper, you're not getting the full picture. Give you an example. I can't tell you how many times I have had questions submitted. Why didn't the police officer just shoot the gun out of the individual's hand or shoot the knife out of his hand? Or why didn't they shoot him, to wound him instead of to kill? And anybody who has ever been on a firearms training simulator, or anybody who's been in the service knows that that's TV. That's the movies. Right. It's not real life.
Yeah, so, Mike, one of the things that I find you running for judge is you're almost like that police officer in a sense. It's the coroner's inquest. If the public is actually informed about it, understands the process, then they won't have the knee-jerk reactions of, oh, officers get away with everything. So why are you running for judge when it's so hard? Because I remember when I registered to vote at 18. I mean, judges, I just either bypassed them or I picked the name I liked. So how are you getting out there, besides shows like this, how are you getting out there and energizing people to vote for you, and why it's so important to vote for judges?
Let me answer the last question first. It's so important because judges, more than anybody else who you vote for, will really have an impact on individuals' lives immediately and on a daily basis. You're not a member of a deliberative body. You're not one of 63 voices who gets to see what everybody else is doing, put your finger up in the air, and see which way the winds are blowing. You have to make decisions that are right and based on the law. And that's one of the reasons that I'm running, because I've been in that position for a long time, and I think that district court is not the place for on-the-job training. It's a place for people who have actually had to make these tough decisions before. I've been an alternate judge in a lot of different places before. I've tried cases. I've represented people. I'm a small business owner myself. I think that I've demonstrated the experience and the mature judgment that is needed in these kinds of critically important positions.
Mike, how do you feel about specialty courts?
As you know, we've got a couple different courts. There's also a little bit of misunderstanding about what the courts are. The only real specialty court by statute in district court is family court. Family court is a division of district court, but it hears only family cases. All of the other district court judges are general jurisdiction judges. They have to be able to hear both civil and criminal cases. One of the big differences between me and my opponent in my race is that I've done all those kinds of cases. He's never done criminal cases. But the chief judge assigns people to different departments and the calendars that they're going to hear depending on the needs of the court. So we, several years ago, decided that a business court would be a good thing to have so that judges could develop some expertise in business matters, and we now have a couple of business court judges. That's a good thing. I think that it's a model that's been tried around the country for a long time. I think it's a good model. I think it's a good thing for judges to become more expert in some of these areas.
So, Mike, what are you going to do different that hasn't been done as far as being a judge in district court?
I don't think it's a question of doing something that's radically different. I think it's more a question of doing it well. One of the things that we've seen when you talk to judges and you talk to litigants is they get frustrated with judges who just don't have the experience and the judgment to do what needs to be done. They either don't do the homework, or they don't understand the issues, or they hesitate to make decisions quickly. I don't know that we need to do anything to radically change the court. I think what we need to do is we need to improve the scholarship on the court. We need to improve the experience level on the court. We need to improve the judgment on the court. And I think that goes a long way to creating the kind of faith and confidence in the court that we need our citizens to have.
So your expertise is criminal, correct?
No, it is not. As I said, I spent the first 20 years of my practice trying all kinds of cases. I've tried cases in every civil department, in the state courts, in the federal courts, every kind of civil case from contracts to business to First Amendment. I'm one of the few lawyers out there who actually has experience in judicial discipline proceedings. I started out doing criminal defense work, did that for 20 years. And I've run offices, and I ran the district attorney's civil division and family support division. I was the chief prosecutor in North Las Vegas. And people have a bit of a short memory. I understand that, and some folks try to paint me as being what I've done last. And for 10 of the last 12 years here, it's true that I have been running offices protecting the community. But my experience is much broader and much deeper than that.
Yeah, you were named the chief deputy city attorney for the criminal division in North Las Vegas from 2004 to 2010.
Correct.
Okay. Mike, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Jim, you have anything else for Mike?
No, actually, I just want to thank Mike for coming in the studio. Really appreciate it. I know some of the questions might be uncomfortable, but we really appreciate you coming in here and answering.
Nothing uncomfortable for
Mike,
me.
did
Just tell
you-
you what you want to know.
Did you find us okay?
I actually went to the wrong studio, which is all my fault, and I apologize for that. It's a little hard to keep all of these things straight sometimes.
Right. Well, that's Michael Davidson, who is a candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 30. We want to thank you for coming on the show, and we want to encourage all of our listeners to go to the voting booth and cast your ballot for Michael Davidson. This is Steve Sanston and Jim Jonas. Until next week, and don't forget to listen to our Fridays KLAV 1230 show on KLAV AM 1230.
The voice of Las Vegas and beyond.